President Biden, by the way, responding to calls for a ceasefire in a new op-ed in the Washington Post. He says, quote, "A ceasefire is not peace." To Hamas's members, every ceasefire time is time for them to exploit to rebuild their stockpile of rockets, reposition fighters, and restart the killing by attacking innocents again. Well, that's interesting. Katie McFarland joins me now. Katie, how do you think President Biden is handling calls for a ceasefire? What's your grade?
Well, I think it's really interesting. And if he means it, he's right. You know, Hamas has used every ceasefire for 40 years, really, to regroup, get more stuff from Iran, get more terrorists trained in their training camps, and then go back and attack Israel. I'm surprised President Biden admitted it. And if he has admitted it, and if he is true about this, if he's going to say true to his word that a ceasefire isn't peace and we want peace, and there by extrapolation means peace is the eradication of Hamas, certainly of Hamas's leaders, then it looks like President Biden, surprisingly, is going to stick with Israel and probably go against the base of his party, which is anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas, and he's willing to defy them. I think the good news about all of this is it buys time. Israel needs time. Israel has done pretty well in the northern part of Gaza, but now they've got to deal with the southern part, and that's where the hostages are, that's where a lot of civilians have fled to, and that's probably where the Hamas leadership is. So Israel needs time to do the job, and I was very happy to see that admission by President Biden.
Yeah. Talking of the hostages, U.S. and Israeli officials say that a deal to release dozens of hostages being held in Gaza could be coming in the coming months. A deal with the terrorists, is that the only way to get these hostages out?
You know, this whole thing of, oh, well, the hostages are about to be traded with Israeli hostages, it doesn't ring true to me. Because who does Hamas have? It has babies and grannies. Those are their hostages. And if they're going to do an equivalent hostage swap, Israel doesn't hold grannies and babies hostage. So who's Israel going to release in this hostage exchange if there is one? Is Israel going to release Hamas terrorists in the jails? I don't think so. Israel has just said we're going to eradicate and kill everybody in Hamas. So the whole thing just sounds a little fishy. And the other thing is, if those hostages are being held in tunnels, and if the hostages are given up by Hamas, what's to prevent Israel from going in and just sealing both ends of those tunnels and killing everybody else inside if the hostages are gone?
That's a very good point. You know, it's amazing to me. We've seen IDF video showing, well, 2 hostages in that hospital, a tunnel running underneath that hospital. It's very clear, even though, you know, pro-Palestinians will say it's propaganda, but it does appear clear that Hamas, as we know, uses hospitals as a shield. And it's amazing to me that the other side of the argument will say, well, that's just not true. How can you defend that line of thinking when you see what's being used by Hamas to try and protect themselves?
You know, it's hard to wrap your head around a people or a human being that would say, I'm going to use my own innocent civilians, women and children, and hide behind them to make sure I can go attack, and then I can hide behind them and so that they're killed first. But I think it's even worse. I think the Palestinians want to have civilian casualties, not just Israeli casualties. They want to have their own casualties. They want to have their own women and children. Why? Because they know they can't beat Israel on the battlefield or on the economic playing field. The only way Hamas and the terrorists win is to beat them on the PR field. And that's what they need. They need to be able to say, see, our women and children are killed, and the Israelis have done it. So in a weird, crazy, creepy way, they welcome the hostages that their own people have, and they welcome the death of their own innocents. Creepy, especially in a holiday season.
Are they winning the PR war, KT? Are they winning that PR war?
Well, look at the UN. So the UN is against Israel. Europeans are now kind of backing away.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, and interestingly, President Biden seems to be sticking with Israel, but the progressive left, the base of his party, is anti-Israel. So, you know, are they winning the war? With a lot of Democrats, a lot of people demonstrating in the streets across the United States, they seem to have won the PR war with them.
All right, we'll leave it there. But always great, fascinating stuff, KT. Thanks for joining us, and happy Thanksgiving to you.